Two, one. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Boozers Basketball Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Amir Montemany. How you doing, Amir?
Doing good. How about you, Neil?
I'm doing great. We are now 2 weeks into the NBA season. We're starting to figure out what's real and what's not. I see you rocking the Heat hat like a true fan. I know Tyler Hero, he had a game winner against Sacramento. What are your thoughts on the Heat right now?
Did you see his game losing shot? Well, not losing shot, but we had an opportunity to tie the game against the Pacers a few days ago, I think. And so, I was hyped up on that obviously shot that he made against the Kings, but like, why were we in that position in the first place after we already lost to them a week prior? They didn't have De'Aaron Fox, and we didn't have Jimmy, but like, still, I think we didn't need Jimmy to win that game, which was evident, I guess, in that scenario. But yeah, I don't know. I don't love when we're tied and he shoots a low percentage, type of shot with a defender right in his face. Right, he had to like sidestep him in order to get the shot off. So I was excited that he made it, but it wasn't the best shot. And then he follows up that performance with an opportunity to tie or win the game against the Pacers. They're down two on the road, and there's like 7 seconds left. And instead of driving to the rim or going for like a mid-range jumper, he does a fadeaway like step back three and basically airballs and barely touches the rim. So I kind of like the mentality of go for the win, but I don't like the idea of going for like a fancy step back plus fadeaway. And also like you're struggling right now. Like we don't need to like we don't need this victory right now, but I think it's like good to build off wins off the road. So like I would go for the overtime because you're a better team and we should have beat the Pacers as well. I think they only had two wins going into the that game. So yeah, not too excited. Just like last week, we got a couple wins, beat the Warriors, beat the Kings, but they're 4 and 6. They're like 10th place. Just frustrated still.
But are you okay with sort of the indication that Hero is going to be that guy at the end of games that Miami's going to turn to hit those clutch shots to win the game? Like, how do you feel about that?
I'm okay with it because Bam's not going to take those, and Jimmy's inconsistent. Like Jimmy's had a few here and there, but not many as a member of the Miami Heat. I'd still probably prefer Jimmy to take like a mid range, shot to win a game or tie a game, perhaps. But like if we're down three, or if we need to hit that three to go for that 1 point win, I'd rather have Tyler do it. And also, he's like 22, so like he's going to be our future potential All Star. So like it's good for him to get this experience like in the regular season under his belt and being able to be that go-to kind of guy. But like in real time playoffs, like rather have Jimmy have the ball. But it depends on the circumstances too, because like remember when LeBron was on the Heat, like him and Wade kind of took turns, but then like Wade actually like superseded LeBron because he was more effective when it came to game winners than LeBron, and he actually allowed him to have that because he kind of took over the franchise and the team anyway, right? Like it was supposed to be Wade's team, and then LeBron obviously took over like every other aspect, so he kind of gave that to Dwayne, right? So I feel like Jimmy can give that to Hero for the most part. So
Yeah, see, that's where I agree with you. I feel like Spoelstra knows that the regular season, it's not like do or die. So let's give Hero opportunities to make important plays and important moments. Let's build him up, and then we'll kind of live or die by with the results. And then by the time we get to the playoffs, if we give Hero enough of these opportunities, then we'll know that like okay, now he's ready to go in the playoffs because we've had this conversation many times before that once we get into the playoffs, Jimmy Butler is a different animal. Like he gets locked in and he's going to be ready to go. But if you build up Hero, he just got his deal. He's feeling a little like fat and cocky a little bit. Let's get him going. Let's make sure that he's getting opportunities to prove himself. So he hit one against Sacramento. He missed it against the Pacers. But if we're like 3 weeks into the season, 3 weeks into the season, if we keep giving those opportunities, by the time the playoffs come in, he's going to be ready to go. That's kind of the way I look at it. it's like an extended preseason kind of. I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know if you have similar thoughts or what your take on that is.
nah, I agree. I mean, it's just reps, right? Prepare. It's practice in a sense. If for a contender, which I don't know if the Heat are contenders this year, honestly. They definitely were last year, obviously, but for a contender, regular season's kind of like the practice, the preparation, right, for the playoffs. So like this is his opportunity to like practice prep. But the third time he has an opportunity this year, which we might have one soon because unless we're getting blown out, like because we're not blowing people out, so games are closer, pretty much as usual. Every Miami Heat game is typically a close one. I just hope he doesn't do a step back fadeaway three and learns his lesson that like, hey, you don't have to make it so hard on yourself and take a better shot or try to get fouled. You know what I mean? So like, I hope there's learning lessons within each game as well. It's not just to like prep you for the playoffs, but learn to take better shots, create better opportunities, and not force it. So,
So we've had previous conversations about what's real, what's not.
yep,
But is there any team that is surprising you to the point where you actually think that they're legit in the Eastern Conference right now? For me, I'll start by saying I think Cleveland's legit.
yep.
They're kind of passing all the tests. I would definitely say that they're probably a top four team at the end of the standings. But if we're looking back to last year, Chicago was doing something similar. They were the best team through 50 games, and then they didn't follow through on that. But Cleveland looks like that team this year. So what's your early impression on Cleveland? I think they're 7-1 through 8 games. It looks like Donovan Mitchell and Garland fit really well together, and then you got the the twin tower duo of Jaron Allen and Evan Mobley. So do you think they're legit?
Twin towers were both, I think, below 7 foot, right?
Right.
Different type of basketball, right? Uh, I mean, Duncan was what 6'11", maybe, but Robinson was like 7 foot, 7 foot one. But anyway, I mean, I like that duo honestly because one, Mobley can stretch the floor, and he's going to develop like a mid-range jump shot that could be consistent, and he's improving. Like he's not the focal point, but he's been solid, right? He's getting like 17 points a game, like 8 rebounds or so. Jared Allen's obviously going to give you the defense, the rebounds, the blocks there. You don't need much offense from him, especially now that you got Garland, a new backcourt teammate that's killing it. I didn't even realize he's like top five in scoring or sixth in scoring. He's like averaging 31 a game. So just new environment and around a better team, essentially. His points have skyrocketed, right? Like 7 points from a guy who's averaging 23 points a game or 24. That's huge, right? So they look good. Garland's been out for like 4 games of the 8 games, right? He's missed, or maybe more even. I think he's missed 5 out of the 8. So it's still impressive that they were able to get those victories without him. Donovan and Levert were carrying the load. So surprised kind of by that, I guess. Again, it's 2 weeks into the season, so it's like, will this sustain? It's early. Basketball's about runs, right? So there's a lot of injuries and load management and schedule, plays a factor as well. Um, but yeah, I'm surprised, by them for sure. By the Hawks, 6-3, they're doing pretty well. Just impressed by the 2 point guards or guards, as Nate McMillan calls them, because they're kind of both unorthodox point guards. I guess Trey is more, I think, more of a point guard than Murray. Murray seems more like a combo guard to me, but um, Trey's more of a scorer. You know what I mean? Like he could still get a bunch of assists, but he's such a dynamic scorer that he has that gravity, draws a lot of defenders, and is a good playmaker, right? And still gets like 9 assists per game. So surprised that those two, technically all-star point guards are unselfishly like playing well together. Who else outside of the Cavs are you surprised by so far, or who are you not surprised by? I guess like if that's another storyline you want to go into, what doesn't surprise you?
I would say in the East, what doesn't surprise me is Milwaukee.
Doesn't.
They're the last undefeated team in the NBA. I really thought that they were going to be the best team in the East, bar none, because they have the best player in the world with Giannis. And Chris Middleton hasn't played a minute yet in this season, and it really hasn't mattered. So I always thought Milwaukee was going to be the best team in the East, and they've kind of validated that with their start. I think they're off to the best start in their franchise history at 8-0. So that hasn't really surprised me too much. I think they're at a point where maybe Giannis is like, I want to win the MVP and I'm just going to get the stats and I'm going to show the league that this is my league, because that was probably a really bitter loss in the playoffs to the Celtics. That was a very close series. Milwaukee thought they had it, and then game 7 they kind of got blown out against Boston. They had a very strict strategy. They're going to pack the paint. They're going to allow Boston to shoot threes, and then Grant Williams has the game of his life shooting. He probably hit like 6 or 7 threes,
7.
and
It was like 7 for 14 or something
yeah,
ridiculous.
it was ridiculous. But then they understood that, look, we got the best player in the world, probably. I think that's probably fair to say. So now they've kind of started the season doing what we thought they would, and they've kind of solidified their spot. But in terms of like surprises, I think at this point, I would say that more surprises are probably happening in terms of on the downside with teams that are disappointing. So Philadelphia might classify. I think they have rebounded to a certain degree. They've won some games. They're not really in the cellar anymore. Outside of that, there isn't really any teams that are like super shocking, because we expected the East to be better this year. It got a lot deeper. Like Cleveland looks good. Everything you said about Cleveland is legit. They look like a top 4 seed. But then if you're looking outside of Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, then you have like a second tier that has like Cleveland, Toronto, Miami's probably in that tier. And then there's like a third tier, which is like Chicago. But I think we can't have a conversation about the Eastern Conference without talking about everything that's going on with the Brooklyn Nets. So let's just take some time to talk about Brooklyn real quick. They decided to bring in Ime Udoka. It was finally time for Steve Nash to get his walking papers, and I think everybody wanted that to happen. And then actually, the first game out when they got rid of Steve Nash, I think they beat the Wizards by 40. So what do you think about what the Nets are trying to do? Like, is coaching that big of a factor in terms of Steve Nash was kind of like the elephant in the room? Like, once we get him out, this team can actually start playing closer to their potential, or how do you think that is? Because Kyrie Irving is a whole nother story, right? So let's talk about the Nets. What are your impressions about the Nets right now?
They got Adoko signed.
I don't know if he's been finalized as a coach, but I
The
think
draft. I know they said they wanted to.
he was the front runner, and I think Jock Vaughn is the coach right now. But
Jock Vaughn
yeah, I mean, because Jock Vaughn was the second in command
Yeah,
under
he's
Nash, and I think Ime is going to be brought on after that.
next year, right? He can't come back. He's suspended from the NBA,
No,
right?
like basically his suspension was imposed by the Celtics. It has nothing to do with the
Oh,
league.
got it. Okay. Jock Vaughn, though, that was Utah Jazz. I think he was like John Stockton's backup at one point or something. If I remember.
Yeah, he's a former player that has a lot of experience, but I think they're going to go with Udoka.
Nice. I mean, I wouldn't blame it all on Nash, but like a guy who's never coached ever in his life is obviously not going to be as effective as like a seasoned veteran coach. Doesn't even have to be like an NBA championship coach, but coaching plays a factor, but it's not the entirety. Like obviously they have so much talent that you would think that the coach wouldn't play as big of a role as it would with like developing super young talent, right? Like and being able to be part of the process of drafting your specific player, right? A lot of coaches have visibility and like say into that, right? To who they want to draft, and so you're like kind of handpicking who you want to play with. Steve Nash technically didn't have that opportunity. He got handpicked by Kevin Durant apparently, right, to come coach the team. So like yes, you could put some blame on Nash for being inexperienced, right? But like, it's more it's more about Kyrie and just the team itself and injuries and other factors, right? But and chemistry, perhaps, right, or effort. Who knows? There's different variables of why teams lack success, right? And like all of that plays a factor. Um, but it's just I think like Kyrie is just such a space cadet head case that like there's no consistency with like being on the court, right, and developing that bond and chemistry and trust from his teammates. So it's like every season there's
And there's no
something,
path for that to change. Like
right,
he's made it clear that this is who he is. And even if you try to make cosmetic changes in the form of changing the coach, like this is just window dressing in terms of like, okay, yeah, we booted Steve Nash out because everybody wanted him out, and now we're bringing in Ime Udoka. Like, is that really going to change much? I'm kind of skeptical on that.
maybe if you bring
And
Pop, let's say if you bring what's if they brought in Popovich and they like
well,
immensely
I mean,
respected him.
Popovich carries a different level
That's
of
what I mean. Yeah,
gravitas,
I
you
agree with
know?
you. Agree with me on in that sense. It's like someone who's like a legend can obviously maybe clean house and fix some leaks. But to your point, I don't think like him coming in is gonna change anything. I think it's all about Kyrie for the most part. I don't want to use him as the complete scapegoat because there are other factors, obviously, right? I don't know. You talked about it last week. I don't know how. I assume KD's improved, but he was minus 31 or whatever, one of the worst plus minuses in the league. So I mean that's another variable too, right? Like I don't know if that was because if it was his defense or whatnot, but I don't know, man. How many games? I haven't been following as much, so as closely. But how many games did Kyrie get suspended for his whole?
He's suspended
Wow,
for 5 games.
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 games only. What do you think about that suspension? Like, do you think 5 games is enough? Like, just we don't need to talk too much about like what he did in the film and all that stuff. But um, do you think five is enough? And like, do you think he only got five because of who he is as a superstar?
Yes. To answer that question, yes, he probably got a lower suspension because of who he is in terms of what he's doing. And Brooklyn's already struggling. So they're like, if we suspended him for 20 games, then we're probably already digging ourselves into a hole that we can't come out of. So I think that definitely plays a part in it. But they
Yeah,
also want to signal to the media in terms of PR that, like, yeah, we take this shit seriously in terms of we're not going to let some anti Semitic remarks kind of purge through the way our organization thinks about things. So they're trying to kind of toe the line and balance everything and be like, okay, we send him a statement. We're like, okay, yeah, you're out 5 games, but what's 5 games? It's not really anything. And then the first game that he's out, the Nets
40.
actually win by 40. So
Right. He didn't say anything anti-Semitic. Technically, he just what like he promoted a movie that was anti-Semitic, right? And he never apologized for it, which is like so odd. It's like why can't you just be like, hey, like I'm sorry, like I didn't realize like I made this mistake. Like he hasn't like apologized, right? Like he hasn't backed.
and that's the thing, like he will
Why?
never apologize. He's like, whatever I did is completely right. You know, he's not the type of person that will admit failure or defeat. He's just like, this is who I am. Like, you got to be cool with it. And that's been demonstrated over and over again.
Yeah, but I don't know about this one. Isn't there like a bunch of things he has to do before he can come back? Like even though he's suspended 5 games, was that by the NBA or by his team?
It was by the team. I think
So
the league is strategically trying to take a step back and not be part of it.
what a joke! It's like all they do is talk about ESPN. All they do is talk about like especially last year Nets Lakers Nets Lakers. Even though they sucked last year, like Kevin Durant LeBron Kevin Durant LeBron. It's like give the Warriors and the Celtics and the Heat and the uh, Bucks, like all the teams that were doing so well last year, they just like still were talking about the Nets after they got swept, still talking about LeBron after they lost the playing game. You know what I mean? It's just like enough is enough. To your point, it's like they want them to be relevant because they want star power, even
That
though
that gets like the eyeballs, and the interesting thing is that's a situation where Milwaukee's going to thrive. Milwaukee is
all market.
they're good with that because even people are going to talk about Boston. Boston's going to get a lot of publicity because they're
Yeah,
like a big market and people care about the Celtics. Meanwhile, you're going to have Milwaukee flying under the radar. They're undefeated right now, and people aren't really talking about that much. Giannis is on his way to winning the MVP. The only person that I've seen through the first couple weeks that's even close to him in terms of like being a true MVP candidate is Luca.
I knew you were going to say that. Yep,
I mean,
fair.
I mean, Luca looks great. He's getting all of the usage. But if Milwaukee has the best record in the league and Dallas is, I mean, I think Dallas is around like 500 right now. So the win loss is not comparing to Milwaukee's. So that's going to allow Giannis to get like a big lead. But the good thing, if you're a Mavericks fan, is that Luca looks good from the jump. I don't know about you, but I've noticed throughout Luca's career that he kind of shows up a little bit out of shape,
Yep.
and then he doesn't really get going until after the All-Star break, which is fine because once he does get going, he's electric and fantastic. But this is like one of the first years that I've actually seen Luca just like from the go, like he's already putting up ridiculous numbers.
Yeah. I mean, he looks solid. He looks healthy. He's just the game slowing down for him in year three or year. No, he's in year past three. He's like in four,
Maybe
four.
four year. I would say year
I think,
four right now.
yeah, but he's like 23, like 24,
Yeah.
right? He's 23. So it's like the game has slowed down like even more so than it has, like which is kind of nuts. Like he sees the game so well. And I mean, he's not a fast player himself. Obviously, he's kind of slow mo, not Ingles slow mo or Derek Anderson, right? But um, yeah, the game is just slowed down for him. Like he just sees the floor so well, like as a ball handler, like a playmaker, a scorer. Like he's just so elite, like on the offensive end, right? Defense he needs to step up, but I don't know. He's such a superstar when it comes to the offensive side that like you can get by with his lack there of defense, but like he needs to be able to learn how to move his feet a little bit better. That's like the next evolution is like be serviceable. Like don't be like horrendous. Like he's gotten better, I think, a little bit, right? Like he has the size and the mindset. I just think he needs to get better on the defensive end to have that impact. Like it could still be an MVP, but like Giannis is just so dominant because he could do it on both sides. Like he is just
Agree.
one of
100%
the best
agree.
defenders in the world. Like if he's not scoring and they're like forcing him to shoot and giving him space, and like Giannis is not like shooting well, like he's gonna shoot well because he shoots like always in the paint. But like if you can somehow get him out of the paint and like Giannis is not effective and having a bad game, like he'll still have a good game on the defensive end, right? He'll still make contributions there. Maybe that's why Dallas is like 5-3, right? And struggling, even though they have like maybe the second best player in the NBA right now, right? They're not like top of the standings or like in seventh place. They were in like 11th when we talked about it last week, right? They were like 2-4, so they are on the upswing. But it's so freaking early, dude. Looking at the standings is like ridiculous. Like there's 9 games. Like it's been 9 games. Like there's so much time left. So many different storylines that can develop. Um, One thing which is funny, I'm looking at the standings. I see the Wizards, Pacers, and Knicks all drop. Like I mentioned last week, when the Wizards and Knicks were like 3-1, they looks like they both have lost 3 or 4 in a row. The Knicks are 4-5 now. They went from 3-1 to 4-5. I said the Bulls and Raptors would leapfrog them, which they have. Raptors are 4, Bulls are number 5. But let's talk about the West. So I guess what surprises you now this week? I mentioned last week, the Grizzlies hot start without Jackson was pretty impressive and losing some players. But What are your thoughts, like in terms of the Western Conference? What surprises you thus far? And then I want to follow up and ask and talk a little bit about the Warriors and what you think about them at the beginning of the season as
Yeah,
well.
so I think one of the easy answers is to say that the Warriors are surprising because I think they're 3-6, 0-5 on the road. They just went on a
7,
long road trip
3 and 7.
and they lost every single game. But honestly, that's not too surprising because
What?
I
Defending
mean they're in a
7.
position
They're
where
defending champs.
yeah, they're defending champs, but they're kind of in coast mode right now. They don't have an incentive to chase wins and be at the top of the standings. But if you're someone like Minnesota, right? Minnesota, they made a statement last year by making the playoffs. They make this splash to trade for Rudy Gobert. So they have something to prove when it comes to the regular season. Like they need to get home court in the first round of the playoffs. If
Right.
you're Minnesota, that's your goal. But if you're the Warriors, you're like, okay, we're healthy. We already know that once we're intact, we can beat anybody in the league because they proved it last year in the playoffs. So they're going to come out. I mean, they had to deal with all this drama with Draymond punching Jordan Poole. Like, they're just not in a place where they're like, okay, we're just going to chase wins in the regular season. They're trying to figure shit out in terms of like, what do we have with Moses Moody? What do we have with James Wiseman? What do we have with Jonathan Kaminga? So they're going to get a lot of minutes, and that's going to cause them to start dropping games. Yeah, sure. Like it might seem concerning on the face if they're losing to Detroit, if they're losing to Charlotte, but if
Magic.
we're if we're
Magic.
in April and
Yeah.
they're in the playoffs, like you're not going to want to see them even if they're like a 6 seed, right?
They're not
So
going to do it.
I'm not like too concerned about that. Like they're pacing themselves. That's the only way I can really put it. So it's not super surprising to me. And I think like what an indication for that was when the sports books released their over under on wins. They were like a 51 over under, something in that vicinity. And that's not anything impressive. So like you go 51-31, you're headed towards like a 3 or 4 seed, right? And then you could kind of see it. They got drilled by Phoenix in a big game. So to answer your question in terms of like who's surprising me, I think my answer would actually be Phoenix. Phoenix is actually looking much better than I thought they would. They're close to the top of the West. They have shown that they're not going in the wrong direction. I mean, it was easy to be like sell stock on Phoenix after they got lit up by Dallas in that game 7, but they brought back DeAndre Ayton. I think they're 6-1, 7-1, something like that. I think they lost to Portland on Friday, so that was their second loss of the season. But they actually look like they're going to be there when it matters. And it's Book's team. Devin Booker is having another great start to the season. And that's moderately surprising to me because I thought they would come in and not be the kind of team that you could count on early in the season, but
Yeah.
they look like they're going to be a top 4 team in the West. I don't know what's your thoughts. What do you think about Phoenix so far? I think they're 7-2, something like
They're
that.
first. They're first place. So they're doing well, I guess. But yeah, it surprised me because Paul's another year older and his name is not LeBron. He doesn't sleep in a cryo chamber and drink the blood of children or
Right.
whatever he
Right.
does.
He's not a vampire.
But like he's still like I hate Chris Paul, but he's like super insanely impressive for is he 37 and he's still, playing really well. He's leading the NBA in assists. Like crazy. Um but yeah, that does surprise me. I thought they'd fall off a little bit. Just with the drama of Aiton. Um what's his name? Crowder, who's a former Heat player.
That was a big part of their starting lineup, and
He's not even playing. He's like
he's MIA, yeah, and
blocked. What's
not
to your
missing a beat.
That's
They got
impressive.
Mikal Bridges playing well. I
Yeah.
mean,
No, I'm impressed. I guess I thought they would fall off and be like 3, 4, 5 seed, not like sustain, and be a top seed, top two. Cam Johnson just got hurt. That's gonna be a big loss. So who knows? Now that's even more depth. So let's talk next week, week by week, man. This is
Yeah,
so early.
because Cam Johnson took Crowder's spot in the starting lineup and was holding his own.
They're losing the depth now. So like, let's talk next week. But they're impressive this week, right? We're talking about this week. So or up to this point, in the season. So yeah, I'm impressed by them. Uh, Warriors, like I kind of like semi agree with you, and I know they'll do better. Obviously, it's the first 10 games of the season. It is surprising because like they still. Do you see the way Draymond like barks and talks and like how passionate he's punching his own teammate in the face during like practice? Like he does not like to lose, even if it's regular season. He's not Shaq. It's not Shaq and Kobe, the turn on the light switch kind of thing, right? Like Curry is in that conversation, right? But it's not two of the best possible 15 players of all time, right? Sorry, Clay is not there, Draymond's not there. Like Lakers, who I hate the most and hated Kobe and Shaq, like had that mentality, but they are like two of the most dominant players in the world, right? Steph is one of the most dominant players, but
But like the
harder for
Lakers
them to turn.
example is such a good example. Like once they were
Right.
kind of getting towards the end of their run, that they were like a 4 seed. That they
Yeah,
were like 50-32, getting the 4 seed in the West playoffs, and no one wanted to play them. That's kind of where the Warriors are at in their run right now.
sure, but they don't have like that duo of superstars to like turn on the switch. They're so competitive. Like I was saying, Draymond gets so mad when he loses. Like they are trying. Like so, I feel like it is a semi concern just for like the moment that they're losing to these teams and it's just unheard of in a sense that like they've lost five in a row. I can't remember the last time the Warriors have ever lost five in a row in the last decade. It feels like even before they won championships. So um, I'm not concerned generally. They'll still be like the second seed. They're 4.5 games back. It's so damn early. Even my shitty Heat team, who's 4 and 6 and in the 12th seed, is 4.5 games back from the Bucks. Like 5.5 games. Excuse me. Right? Even though the Bucks are 9-0, so like it's just so damn early. So like I'm not concerned. Um, it's concerning now that like why are you losing to these teams? Like I don't think they're coasting that hard. Curry had like 39 points against either the Detroit game or against Orlando. Like he's making buckets, he's trying to win. So it's a little concerning that they're not pulling it off, right? But then again, it's like there's reasons. To your point, maybe they're coasting a little bit. They're playing younger guys. Maybe they're not trying as hard, or they are trying, and just shit happens. Like it's the NBA. Maybe it's getting more competitive, right? Unlike football. Jesus Christ, mediocre, right? It feels like football's getting worse. Maybe basketball's getting better, right? More teams are getting more competitive. Um, but I'm not like, concerned overall. Like I don't even. You said that the Warriors could coast and become like a fifth seed, sixth seed. That's like if they're like uber coasting and like not trying at all. But no, they're going to be like a top three seed for sure. Like they'll figure this out. They have so much talent, and I don't know. I just thought it was concerning now in a sense, or not concerning, but just surprising. It's definitely not concerning. Still, it's a little surprising that they've lost these folks because I don't feel like they're cruising as much as you think. Like because Curry and
Well, I mean,
are having good games.
if we're talking about what our expectations were about what the top of the West was going to look like in the preseason, I
Yeah,
think it was fair to say that the Clippers, the Nuggets, and the Warriors were up there,
yeah,
and the Clippers are just as disappointing as the Warriors, and they don't have the same level of equity when it comes to like the amount of championships you've won, right? So
yeah, definitely.
like you can't write it off the same way as you can with the Warriors. The Nuggets, I think I guess you could say they're treading water, but Phoenix has surprised me in terms of what they've done. I figured they would be more of a middle tier team, and they're closer to the top. And then if we're looking at the top of the standings, obviously you have like outliers like Utah, Portland,
Right.
that we don't expect to be there towards the end of the season. Like this is just a temporary thing. And you can correct me if you disagree, but I don't really see them as being the type of teams that will be there later on in the season.
Jazz in Portland?
Yeah.
Obviously not. Oh, you
Yeah.
didn't even
So
ask me that. Yeah,
okay, so
they'll
we agree with that.
100%. Are you kidding me? Of course. Jazz are 7-3. Like, let's talk. What I say about the Knicks. I was more adamant about the Knicks because the Knicks freaking suck so much balls. And I got to be a true Heat fan and pretend like we still have a rivalry, even though we haven't in 20 something years. But Jazz are 7-3. Let's do a podcast next week or so. I'm gonna say,
Let's say after Christmas. I think that's the
yeah, that's when they go back down to earth, like get cold or
yeah.
stuff. Okay,
Because they'll maybe they have a bunch of home games because it's actually pretty easy to talk. Like
right.
when Utah's at home, they're actually a problem. They're gonna win games at home, but
Yeah,
then once the schedule sends them on like a 6 game road trip, they're gonna start dropping big time down the standings. And I
potentially.
feel like once we get to Christmas, around the new year, they'll probably have had that sort of long road trip and then they'll start tumbling down the standings.
Yeah, possibly. They're always a good home team. It's like the Seahawks, Saints.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Spurs play good at home. Just there's always like teams that historically in different sports play good at home. They have good fans. They got good home court, I guess. But yeah, they're gonna regress big time.
One thing I did want to ask you about though, it seems like the Lakers have actually made and like the right decision by sending Russ to the bench, and he's actually playing pretty well. So, do you think that is a path to success for the Lakers? I mean, I think they're like 2-5. They're
Six,
still
six.
deep in the depths of being a mediocre team, but is that like something that is actually meaningful that they can build off of moving forward, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, if they want to beat the Kings and the Pacers and the Magic, sure, let Russ cook some backups. But I don't think it's meaningful. I mean, he's playing better, but he's also a former superstar and a former All Star. So it's like he's going to have some good games. He's still capable, right? But he's not going to be as consistent as he was.
All
So
right, so AKA they got to trade him.
I mean, him and someone else, maybe AD. I don't know, make something go blockbuster even more so. Just get AD and Russ.
That's interesting. See,
Get
see, that's very interesting.
AD and Russ and every draft pick you have till 2059 for Jokic. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way, but like AD, Russ, and like every first round pick you have.
Denver would never do that.
Of course not, but every first round pick for the next 7 years, like, or whatever the maximum could be. I know. I was just saying that's like something they need to do to like even have a chance, right? You need to get like an MVP type caliber player to like salvage this team type move. Like I don't think just trading Russ for like a Bradley Beal or something is gonna help them win. In all, they're gonna like get better and they'll probably be like a top 6 team if they got like I don't know, I'm just throwing like a Beal type player. You know what I mean? Like if they get someone like that, they can maybe go from like whatever 12 seed to like a top 5 seed potentially, right? Like if you get that extra score, like if they got like a Donovan Mitchell type player, if you will, right? Young, that kind of scorer. I still don't know if they would win necessarily. I don't know. I think they just need to blow it up.
Well, I'm actually glad you brought that up. So, sounds like you think Bradley Beal is probably the next shoe to drop in terms of like a reputable star that might be on the trading block pretty soon.
I don't know, man. He's like Dame. Those fools are so loyal; they don't want to leave. You know. So I don't
Well,
know.
I think Dame's a little bit farther away from getting traded than Beal. It seemed like Lillard was on his way to being one of those pieces that could get traded, but I think he re-upped with Portland, so now that's kind of cooled off a little bit. But when you brought up Bradley Beal, I thought that was interesting because I think that is someone who is very attainable for the right price. But he did sign his extension also, like
Last year, right?
very expensive extension.
Mm-hmm.
So he got paid and he has the message that he wants to stay and be loyal, right? Because he signed for a mega deal, but Washington's not really going anywhere. So he probably won't get traded either.
He won't. He's too. People have been saying this for the last 3 years. You know, like 4 year. How it's been at least 4 seasons or so, where they've been talking about Bradley Beal should get traded, but he keeps signing extensions with the team, so he wants to stay loyal. So
And he's okay with being a team that's trying to threaten the play-in race in the East.
I guess so.
All right. So, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Nope.
All right, cool. So, this has been another episode of the Boozers Basketball Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Please like and subscribe. We will see you very soon for another update on the goings and happenings in the NBA. Have a great week.
Peace.